Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Off-Farm Income Podcast. Hey, thank you so much for joining us here on our YouTube channel for episode number 1023. Well, today we are going to take you out to Wisconsin, and we are going to introduce you to Alice in Dairyland. Actually, we're going to be introducing you to Julia Nunes, who is currently serving as Alice in Dairyland for the state of Wisconsin. And, you know, I'd love to do interviews like this and sprinkle these in every now and then because we get to talk about advocacy for agriculture. And whenever we can focus on that, I think it's really important to do. Because all of us, no matter what we do in ag, if we start a small business like we talk about here on this show, if we're doing something different, maybe we're farming full-time, we've all got another job, and that is to advocate for agriculture. And boy, I'll tell you what, I haven't met many people who can do it better than this young lady who we get to interview today. I'm very excited to get this started for you, and we're going to do that right now. Julia, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited.
Oh, well, good. I am eager to speak with you, and I'm eager to learn. Well, I'm eager to learn about you and your farm. Got a couple questions there, but also about Alice in Dairyland. I thought, what a clever name, and I had no idea that it went back so deep in our nation's farming history or in Wisconsin's farming history. So eager to find out about all of that. So I really do appreciate you taking the time. You probably do this stuff a lot.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about myself, but I'm also excited to, like you said, highlight the Alice in Dairyland program. It's well known in Wisconsin, so I'm excited to talk about it with maybe an audience that isn't as familiar with the program. So, yeah.
Well, as we were talking about off the air, I live in the number 3 dairy state. I think it goes, unless it's changed, I think it goes California, Wisconsin, Idaho. So it's very big here. It's a great idea for us to do something like that here as well.
Yeah. And I think that depends on how you look at it. California might have more farms, but Wisconsin makes more cheese. So it's kind of a competition. But
All right, fine. I won't do that to you. No, I'm just talking pure cow numbers. But yeah, you're right. You're right. It varies in the industry. Okay, well, let's do this. Let's start off with Alice in Dairyland. Tell us the history of this title, where it comes from, and what the purpose of it is.
Ooh, so that is a loaded question. And I hate to say it, I'm not an Alice in Dairyland history expert. I wish I was, but there is so much in the Alice in Dairyland history, and I'm diving into that right now. The month of March is Women's History Month, so on social media, I'm highlighting a lot of different Alice in Dairyland history. So the program started in 1948, so it's been around for over 7 decades, and I'm number 73. So, and I will actually be continuing on into the 74th year. That's probably another question. So the program has started a long time ago, like I said, 1948. And it started as more of like a pageant queen position. It was right out of high school, girls would serve. And I don't think it was a full year position yet. And then in 1952, the Wisconsin Department of Agriculture, Trade and Consumer Protection partnered with the program and made it a full-time position. So ever since then, Alice in Dairyland has been a 1-year term where women serve as a representative for Wisconsin agriculture. So we get to represent everything from cranberries to ginseng to the dairy industry, which, like we've talked about, is a big part of Wisconsin agriculture. And the position has really changed and morphed throughout the years. In early years, it was kind of more, you traveled the whole nation and I was looking into some history today, actually, that Alice in Dairyland was in the Rose Parade in California in 1960, I believe. So there's a lot of history. It's really fun kind of looking into that and learning more about all the unique things that Alice in Dairyland did in the early years. So there's a lot of history. I read again today that Alice in Dairyland would deliver cheese to the vice president. And I'm just like, that's crazy that happened way back then.
Yeah, I actually saw that picture on the Facebook page of Alice in Dairyland with Richard Nixon. And obviously that was when he was vice president for Eisenhower. So that's way back. That is the late 50s. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy looking at these pictures of Alice in Dairyland and seeing a face you recognize and you're just like, wait, what happened? And so it's really fun to look into the history because like I said, there's been 72 before me, and there's been a lot that they've been through. So lots of history in this program.
And just to clarify for the listeners, it's called Alice in Dairyland, but it doesn't it's not focused exclusively on dairy. It is agriculture in Wisconsin.
That's correct. When the program started, I think it was mostly talking about dairy because we are
Sure.
in Wisconsin known as America's Dairyland. And I think that in the beginning, it was probably around the time when Alice in Wonderland was very popular.
Of course.
So then Alice in Dairyland. So Alice exploring Wisconsin. That's kind of the way I look at it. I'm not sure exactly how the name happened. I probably need to look into that. But yeah, it's a unique story. But in the beginning, like I said, it was mostly representing dairy and talking about Wisconsin cheese because that's kind of, you can find it almost anywhere in the nation. So
sure.
yeah.
Well, and now today, you guys are the #1 cranberry producing state. So you got that going for you
right.
too. Yeah.
I could tell you a lot about the agriculture commodities. So we are #1 in cranberries and ginseng, which not a lot of people know. Ginseng is a root that we send a lot over to Asian markets. We actually produce over 95% of the ginseng here in Wisconsin.
Wow.
So kind of ginseng powerhouse. But yes, cranberries, ginseng, cheese, snap beans, corn silage. We're #1 in a few things, but we have a lot of cows, produce a lot of cheese, need to feed them corn silage. So it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, let's talk about Julia for a second, because I was reading about you on the website and watched your video that was on the Allison Dairyland website, and you come off of a dairy yourself, and your family dairy has one of the most intriguing titles that I've ever seen, Scientific Holsteins. You've got to explain that to me.
Okay, well, it's kind of a story. So we were kind of big into registered cattle for a while. So we would take our registered Holsteins to different shows, and me and my sisters each got to have our own farm name or a prefix when we were little. And my dad got to do the same thing when he was little. And so that's where Scientific Holsteins came from. His favorite subject when he was in 4th or 5th grade was science. And ever since then, his cows have had scientific in their prefix in their name. So that's how it started. It's really not more than that. My dad's favorite subject was science. And on a dairy farm, you use science about every day, whether you're making a ration or understanding why a cow might need a certain thing in her diet, things like that. So that's what it is. There's no crazy scientists on our farm. It's just Scientific Holsteins is the name that my dad picked. Some people might recognize the name. We did have a cow who did well at World Dairy Expo in 2005. So some people will recognize that. And my dad has had a few bulls in the bull studs for people who breed registered cattle. So that's, if it rings a bell for some people, that Scientific Holsteins, that might be why. But otherwise, it was just my dad's favorite subject in elementary school.
Okay. So the entire cow herd is not cloned from one like mother cow or something, or they're not androids or something like that.
No clones, just cows doing what they do on most farms, is just eating, sleep, and make milk. So
now hold on. Do you have robotic milking machines?
Yes. So
well, there you go.
That's kind of the science part. I suppose. So we have 2 robotic milking machines. We put those in the winter of 2015. So it's been 5.5 years since we put them in. And that's been an adjustment. We used to milk before then in just a tie stall barn, which my parents had to adjust when they moved to Wisconsin to the tie stall barn. That was something new. But yeah, so it's been an adventure having new technology on the farm. It's something that I think is kind of fun, especially when we have classrooms out. We used to host kindergartners when they could go on field trips, and that was always fun, seeing them look at the robots and watch the lasers scan the cow's udder. So it's cool to have a new technology on the farm. Okay.
Now, you said that you and your sister, like your dad, got your own farm prefix. Can you explain to me what you mean by that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I have 3 sisters, and a prefix is like a farm name. So my family friends, they're Ocean View Genetics, and so all their cows are Ocean View, fancy, whatever you want to name your cow.
Okay.
So my dad is Scientific. So each cow's name will start with Scientific Debutante Ray or Scientific Felicia, and that's a way for people to know what farm they come from. So you read the name, you know exactly where that cow came from. And so me and my sisters, we each were given a calf for our fifth or sixth birthday.
Okay.
And so with that, we each got to kind of pick our own farm name. And we were younger at that time, so my parents were kind of picking them for us. And my sisters, I have three sisters, Alexa, Katrina, Julia, and Geneva.
Okay.
And their names for their farms are Katrinas or Genevas, but there must have been a lot of Julias. And my name was taken. So I got to pick my own, and my prefix that I picked is called Fancy Pants. So all my animals that I bred that are in my farm name had Fancy Pants in the beginning. So it's kind of funny to look and see. You look back through an animal's pedigree, and I see Fancy Pants. I'm like, oh, that goes back to one of my cows, which I think is really fun. So that's what a prefix is, and that's
Okay.
kind of how you can kind of trace back lineage and see which farm it came from.
Okay. All right. Well, so let's talk some more about you. So what stage of life are you in right now? Post high school, in college, done with college, working full time. I mean, tell us about you. Where are you at?
Yes, so I am 23 years old. I am post college. I graduated from the University of Minnesota in the spring of 2019. So about a year and a half out of
Mm-hmm.
college, I guess now. Crazy how that time flies. But yeah, I went to college and studied animal science and agricultural communication and marketing. Wanted to go into agriculture. That's what I love. Um, but yeah, and Alice in Dairyland, I don't think I said this, is a full-time position. So I get paid to do this. Some people ask me like, oh, well, what's your day job? I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
no, this is a full-time job. It's a lot of work. I do more than just post on social media. I write articles and things like that. So it is a lot of work, but it's fun, and I think it'll be worth it in the long run because it's a great learning opportunity for me. But
Sure.
yes, post college, full-time job position right now. So
Okay. Very good. And then in high school, were you involved in ag? Were you in the FFA or anything like that?
yes, so I was involved in 4-H. Unfortunately, my school at the time when I was in high school didn't have a strong FFA program.
Mm-hmm.
They do now. They're building it up, which I think is awesome. My little sister was in the FFA in my high school, but I wasn't. I was in 4-H. I did a little bit of dairy judging. Otherwise, I took my dairy cows to the county fair and the state fair. So it's always been a big part of my life, and I've always loved telling people about at the county fair. I would love when my friends from school would come, and I would be like, this is what I talk about all the time. Here's my cows. This is what I love, and kind of show them about why I'm the crazy farm girl from school. So yeah, that's how I was involved in high school. But other than just loving agriculture, I was also involved in music. I was in musicals and played different sports. So kind of had my hat in multiple rings.
Sounds like it. Wow. Okay. So you're in musicals. So like singing and dancing around the stage and things like that?
Oh yeah, I was in choir, jazz choir, musicals, show choir, singing, dancing. Yeah, all about it. So being
Wow.
on a stage or being up in front of a crowd as Alice in Dairyland, it's a little bit scary, but I've done it a few times before,
Okay.
so I kind of am used to it.
Okay. Now, when you went into college, you majored in animal science and ag communications. What career did you have in mind when you chose those majors?
That's a great question. I think when I chose the majors originally, I was kind of like, I'm not sure what I want to do. So I'll just kind of try to do a few different things and make my job positions that I can go into kind of broad.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that I'm not sure exactly what position title I'm looking for even after Alice in Dairyland. I know I want to do something in communications, working with conveying a message that farmers work so hard and why dairy products or agriculture products are good and healthy and sustainably produced, because I grew up on a farm and I love to
Sure.
share my experiences and my stories from that, because I know not a lot of people, they're going further and further away
Right.
from people who did grow up on farms. So that's, I'm not sure what's next for me or what lies beyond, but I hope, I know it'll be something related to agriculture for sure.
Okay. Excellent. Well, good for you. So when did becoming Alice in Dairyland, when did that get on your radar?
Ooh, good question. So I first learned what Alice in Dairyland was when I was about 10 years old. And I live in Chippewa Falls, which is Chippewa County. And Chippewa County hosted the 60th Alice in Dairyland competition. And that's where all the finalists come and they have the competition, they give speeches and things like that. So I was 10 and my mom was on the planning committee for the Alice in Dairyland finals. So me and my sisters got to kind of meet all the contestants and kind of get a backstage view. But ever since then, I knew who Alice was. So every year at World Dairy Expo or at the state fair, I would kind of look for Alice in Dairyland because there's a new one each year. So you get to kind of meet them and see them. And she wears a tiara when she's out in public at those events. So I was just like, oh my gosh, a princess who gets to talk about cheese and like who wouldn't want to do this? So that's kind of when I met Alice for the first time was when I was about 10. And ever since then, I've kind of kept up with Alice, watched her. But I never really thought that I would become Alice in Dairyland. It just never seemed like something that would really be possible, or I don't know. I just wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna for sure do that. And then after college, I started working for a hemp farm actually, and that ended up kind of not working out, and I was kind of like in a low spot, and I was like, hey, Alice in Dairyland applications are open and they're taking them right now. I'm gonna fill it out and see what happens. And then they told me I was a top candidate, and like the rest is kind of history. I so that was July, or no, not July, January of 2020 is when I submitted my application, and then I was selected in July. I started in July.
July of last summer, 2020.
Yes, July of 2020 is when I started officially, and then I would have finished in this June of 2021, but they've extended my term, so I'm the first to do 2 years. So that's kind of crazy to think about.
Historic.
But yeah, yeah, I know. I'll be in the history books in 50 years. They'll be like, that girl, Julia, she was the first to do 2 years. Crazy how 2020 was so long ago.
Oh, no, you're gonna be the pandemic Alice in Dairyland.
I know. I know. I'll be the girl who they don't have any pictures of at events, but they have like a lot of Zoom interview pictures or something. But
is that why
yeah,
is that why they extended it? Because I mean, basically your entire term, you haven't been able to go out and do events and do the things that every other Alice in Dairyland's been able to do.
Yeah, I think that's part of the reason why they extended it. I know that the Alice in Dairyland Finals is usually a huge event where a lot of the former Alice in Dairylands come, and it's kind of a gathering, a reunion of sorts. And this year they wouldn't be able to have that. So, and they wouldn't be able to host the competition. How are you going to pick an Alice in Dairyland if you never get to meet them in person type of thing? So they ended up choosing to allow me to do a second year, allow me to hopefully, fingers crossed, get to do some of those things that I didn't get to do my first year. So like I said, I'm hopeful for some of these events. So only time will tell if they'll actually get to happen. But I'm looking forward to getting another opportunity at that.
Okay. And I'm a horrible amateur interviewer here. What I meant to say was, in addition to you being phenomenal at being Alice in Dairyland, is the pandemic also a slight part of why you're extended? That's what I meant to say. Okay.
Well, thank you for the compliment, but we'll see. I gotta keep it going for the second year. So hopefully people still say that after my term is done. They'll be like, she was great.
All right. So when you were going through this competition, what does it consist of? Does it consist of agricultural knowledge, just basic interviews? How do you become Alice in Dairyland?
Yes, that is. So it was kind of a crazy. It's like the people say it's the hardest job interview you will ever do, and hopefully that's right because that means it's behind me and everything from here on out is easy. So it started with submitting an application in July, and then in January. That's when I submitted my application.
Okay.
And then you had your preliminary interview in February. And that's everyone who submitted an application, they get to interview them, ask them, what are important issues in agriculture? Why do you want to be Alice in Dairyland? Those type of things. After that, they pick top five candidates. And then once you're a top candidate, you have a couple months to prepare for the finals. And so as a top candidate, you need to prepare speeches, mock social media plans, write articles, write blog posts. We had to shoot a video of agriculture business in our hometown since we couldn't go on tours.
Hmm.
Um, so it's kind of a lot of work, and it really did help prepare me to be Alice in Dairyland, especially with the virtual video making, because that's what I've been doing a lot
Sure.
of. Um, so it is kind of an intense interview, and then at the finals, you give your final speech, you do a mock TV interview, you do a mock radio interview. Um, so it is really a lot of work, but it's definitely worth it. And even if I wasn't selected, I think that those skills that I gained while preparing and the knowledge, I did a lot of research, a lot of flashcards. Um, how many pounds of cheese does Wisconsin produce? How many cranberries? Like, when did this happen? So, like, a lot of this knowledge is just like people will say something, and I'll just like, oh, Wisconsin has 435,000 jobs related to agriculture, and I'm just like, where did that come from? So a lot of the a lot of the statistics and things like that you learn as a top candidate. So it is a lot of work, but I think that after, like, looking back at it, I'm like, that was totally worth it, and I'm glad. Like, during the process, there was days I was like, this is so hard, I don't want to do this, but it was a learning process, and I think that I'm grateful for the whole thing.
So you're like a walking Wikipedia page about Wisconsin agriculture now.
Yes, but it is a new year, so I find myself having to fact check myself. I'm like, oh wait, is there a new statistic for
Uh-huh.
2019 that I missed, or something that the numbers got counted and now I need to shift something in my brain. You could say I'm kind of a Wikipedia page,
Okay.
broad, very broad.
So who pays your salary? Is it like, is Alice in Dairyland like its own nonprofit organization that does fundraising and then they pay you, or is this sponsored somewhere else?
So I am an employee of the state. So I'm employed by Wisconsin's Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection.
Mm.
And then with that, I also have sponsors who kind of help give me information, help me with promotional things. So one of those is the Dairy Farmers of Wisconsin, and they are a nonprofit here in Wisconsin who represent all things dairy farmers, all things dairy products. So they help me with a lot of my messaging on dairy, on cheese, things like that. And they're so much fun to work with. And I'm very grateful for their partnership. But I also am partnered with the Kettle Moraine Mink Breeders Association. They give Alice in Dairyland a mink coat each year because Wisconsin is the #1 in mink production.
Okay.
Also, the Midwest Jewelers Association, who let me wear the tiara and the mink, or the brooch, and that's filled with native Wisconsin gemstones. And then I'm probably forgetting one. Oh, yes, the Corn Promotion Board, because I get to drive this gorgeous car that has a big corn cob on the side of it. And that's to promote ethanol here in the state of Wisconsin. So I kind of work with different organizations around the state, whether it's the ginseng board, things like that. So, but I am employed by the Department of Agriculture, Trade and Consumer Protection, DATCAP. But I do work with a lot of different ag organizations around the state as well.
Okay. So it's interesting, not to take a serious tone, a too serious tone in the interview, but you're out there to promote Wisconsin agriculture, and agriculture is something that can be under fire. There's a lot of misinformation. There's some accurate information. I mean, as any industry, we've always got room for improvement, but there's a lot of people out there who they've got their sights kind of set on agriculture. For example, I think just earlier this week, I saw an article about people that are trying to ban and prohibit mink farming. It was just like this week or the end of last week. So when issues like that crop up, and it's a very Wisconsin-centered issue, do you find yourself kind of being the tip of the spear on that? Do you have people on social media that are making comments that you're responding to? Do you find yourself defending or maybe being proactive and educating people about ag and about the truth about the industry to defend it?
Yeah, I would say I mostly take a proactive approach. I just aim to share positive information, factual information about Wisconsin agriculture. If I do get negative comments, I usually try to respond with a fact or don't respond at all. A lot of those people who do have really negative opinions, I'm probably not going to change their opinion. So I just try to be proactive, share positive information, whether it's about mink. People don't understand how sustainable mink are. Their fur is biodegradable. So whether you're done with a garment, that's going to biodegrade. rather than your coat that's made of plastic, which
Hmm.
won't biodegrade. Or mink, for example, they eat things that we can't eat that would otherwise go into a landfill, whether it's meat that was packaged wrong, or uh, uh, why am I blanking? Like from a cheese plant, the ends of cheese blocks that people can't eat. The mink will use that. So I try to share facts like that, things that are proactive, like you said.
Hmm. Yeah. And I imagine, I mean, we have to be proactive in agriculture. We have to tell our story, because if we don't, someone's going to tell it in an inaccurate way and for their own purposes. So yeah, I'm really happy that the state of Wisconsin is doing this. And man, I'd like to see other state departments of ag do this. Do you have any contemporaries in other states that you collaborate with that are doing something similar to what you're doing?
That's a great question, and I know that I kind of look for people who I can connect with, especially
Hmm.
right now because I'm doing a lot of virtual
Right.
things. I know I've been talking with the Princess K of the Milky Way, who is Minnesota's dairy ambassador. I actually went to college with her, so it's kind of funny in that respect. So we kind of had that connection, and it's fun to pair up and talk about how awesome agriculture is and the dairy industry specifically when talking about Princess K of the Milky Way. But I would love to reach out to other states' agriculture or dairy ambassadors to kind of talk about how awesome agriculture is, because I think we want to share the same message that farmers do care about the environment and their animals and the land that they're working on, because they want to continue on for generations. That's just what farmers do. That's how we work. So hopefully in the future I'll keep connecting with other agriculture ambassadors around the nation, because I think that would be awesome.
Man, now I want a Milky Way. It's like the top three candy bar in existence, in my opinion. Okay, you sorry, you wound up going to college in Minnesota. Why did you jump over the border?
Oh, great question. So I'm from Chippewa Falls, which is by Eau Claire, if you know anything about
Hmm.
Wisconsin geography, just east of the Twin Cities. So the Twin Cities are actually closer to my family's home than Madison. Um, I will say I submitted an application to college for three schools. One was Madison, one was UW River Falls, and one was the University of Minnesota. Um, my older sister was going to River Falls, and I wanted to go somewhere new. I didn't want to follow in her footsteps. And then the dairy judging coach from the University of Minnesota was very persuasive, and he's an awesome. That's Dr. Les Hansen, and he kind of recruited me to come to the University of Minnesota, and that's where I went. Never looked back. It was a great experience. I loved the people I met, loved my roommates, and I just loved my overall experience. So I'm very happy that I chose the University of Minnesota. Um, nothing to bash the UW Madison. I've heard great things about them as well, but I did enjoy my time in Minnesota.
All right, so I host another show for Pioneer Seeds called the Corn Revolution. I did a show for them called the Pioneer Tour as well, and I interviewed a corn breeder from western Wisconsin, very very near the border with Minnesota. And I asked him this question. I'm going to ask you this question as well. So you're from Wisconsin, but you live so close to the Twin Cities. So when it comes to football, is it the
Ooh,
Vikings or is it the Packers?
Packers.
See, he had the same
No.
answer. But I mean,
Oh,
you're so far from
I
Green
will.
Bay.
Oh, I'm not. So I'm about an hour or 2 hours from the Twin Cities. So
Okay.
I'm far enough into Wisconsin that I'm not going to be swayed to the purple and no,
All right.
purple and yellow. I don't know what colors they are, but I'm 100%. Well, I'm not 100%. My parents actually grew up in California, so I grew up rooting for the 49ers. Um, but
Nice.
I know people who are big Packer fans, so I will cheer for the Packers any day over the Vikings.
Okay. So I'm a huge 49ers fan. I could talk about that for another 2 hours, but I was going to ask you that because you talked about your parents coming to Wisconsin and adjusting to the freestall barn, right? Or the how did you refer to it
Yeah,
again?
the tie stall
The tie
barn.
stall barn.
So
Thank
they
you.
don't have a lot. Yeah.
Okay. So they came off of the dairy industry in California, I'm assuming.
Yeah. So they grew up in California. It's kind of a long story. My parents both grew up in California, and then both on dairy farms. My
Mm-hmm.
mom's family moved to Oregon, and then they got married and ended up staying on that side of the country for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And then they moved to Michigan, and they worked on a dairy farm there for a
Okay.
while, and then ended up moving to Wisconsin when I was in first grade. Bought their own dairy farm and been here ever since. So they've kind of been all over the country and dairying.
Okay. Where in California, do you know?
Oh my goodness, that's Merced,
Aha.
around
Okay.
Merced.
Yeah, that's right where I'm from too. So I'm from Oakdale or north of Oakdale, but not too far from Merced. So yeah, very interesting. I wondered about that. Okay. Well, so you've got this position. You're going to do it for an extended amount of time. And obviously, you get to do a lot of really incredible things while you are in this position. How is this preparing you for the next stage of your life?
I would say it's preparing me in more ways that I probably even know. I get to connect with so many different people and so many different organizations, first of all. So I think that any opportunity that anyone has to branch out and expand their network is a great thing, because I say you never want to burn a bridge. You never know who you're gonna work with in the future, whether
Hmm.
it's the potato growers that I toured and saw how they grow potatoes. Maybe I'll work there someday. Or one of those women who I toured with, she was a former Alice in Dairyland.
Okay.
So things like that, I think that is, or another, the 70th Alice in Dairyland works for a major cheese company in Wisconsin. So I think that things like that, I kind of pick up on knowing so much about a wide variety of Wisconsin products is something that I think is crazy amount of knowledge to have in
Hmm.
my head. But I think that things like that, just those tidbits of knowledge and the professionalism, the public speaking element is something that not a lot of people get. Not a lot of people get to do a lot of radio or TV interviews even. So I think that aspect of it is something that I will never get the chance to do again. And hopefully it's going to benefit me a lot in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, with you, you had already had an interest and chosen ag communications. Man, this is like the epitome of ag communications. So you are set up if that's the field you want to go into. Is there any thoughts of returning to your family's dairy?
Mm. I say that I think that that's something that I think about a lot. Me and my sisters all think about that. I think that it really depends on what happens in the future. If my parents want to continue on, if we want to end up adding on something that will bring something new to the business. I worked for a cheese creamery in college, and I thought that it was right on their family's dairy farm. And I thought that that was awesome. But that's a whole nother ball game if I would want
Hmm.
to get into something like that. So I'm really unsure about it, but we'll see what happens in the future with me and my family here on our dairy farm. I know I love the dairy farm. I loved growing up on the farm. So it would be really, really difficult to not continue that.
Sure. Yeah, I can imagine. Well, so what did you not know about Wisconsin agriculture before you found yourself in this role?
No, we could, like you said, we could talk for another 2 hours on this. Um, I, I will say I did not know a lot. And I don't even right now. I couldn't even tell you what I didn't know because I probably still don't know it.
Okay.
I didn't know much about ginseng. I didn't know much about cranberries, and I've learned so much about the dairy industry here in Wisconsin. So this whole process has been just like a college class for me, just like
Hmm.
learning you like a sponge, you just soak everything up. And I think where I learn the most is when I'm out on farms, touring farms or going to a potato harvest, like I said, or going to a processing plant. That's how I learn best is hands-on learning, which kind of is unfortunate right now during COVID-19 where I can't travel.
Sure.
But I love traveling. That's how I learn. That's how I share information best is someone can ask me about mink farming, and I'll say, oh, I toured a mink farm, and this is what I learned.
Hmm.
That's how that's that's where I thrive. Um, so I suppose the answer to your question is, what did I not know? I'm not done learning yet, so
Sure.
I probably will have a better answer to that in a year and a half.
Yeah, you do not know what you don't know, right?
That is true.
Very cool. Well, this is great. It's a pleasure to meet you. You are a wonderful young lady, and I love to hear about advocacy like this, and to see that the state of Wisconsin is so invested in educating people about agriculture and about what they do, that they're willing to pay somebody full time to do this year after year after year. I think it is really, really fantastic. And I cannot thank you enough for joining us and doing what you do.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm excited. I feel very, I'm sorry, cut that out. I, I thank you so much for having me on. I'm glad I had this opportunity to talk more about the Allison Dairyland program and Wisconsin agriculture. I think the coolest part about the Allison Dairyland program is that there's a new person every year, or mostly every year, and they bring a new spin to the program, and they get to talk about their own experiences. Not everyone grew up on a dairy farm. Maybe you have someone who has their own honeybees, things like that. So I think that that's something that's really interesting about the program. You get to get someone else's experience, someone else's passion every year. So thank you so much for having me on. I hope you learned something about Wisconsin agriculture. Yeah, if anyone listening wants to learn more about the Allison Dairyland program, you can follow me on social media. Just search Allison Dairyland. I'm on every platform, or go to AllisonDairyland.com. There you'll learn more about the Allison Dairyland history. I also write blogs on there. Again, AllisonDairyland.com for anyone who wants to learn more.
Awesome. Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Well, thank you for being here, everybody, and thank you to Julia Nunes for coming on the Off Farm Income Podcast today, representing Alice in Dairyland in the state of Wisconsin. That was a lot of fun, and really glad that we were able to do that. Well, hey, we would love to connect with you. We'd love to have you as a subscriber right here on our very own YouTube channel. And if you're out there in the world of social media, please like and follow us. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram, everybody. And until next time, enjoy your journey to the ultimate lifestyle business, agriculture.